Proportional Response, Book 1. Chapter 15, Part 5, A Promise of Aid. Enible's eyebrows rose in shock as both Zoltan's voices ended mid-tirade after the feline Ruxa ambassador, Telil, all but outright challenged them. Both Jalat and Kilintar leveled stares at Telil, which made it clear they intended to kill him. The male Feliniod paid them no mind and continued.
So, before I ask for seconds on my proposal, I will ask that the Council indulge me in asking the humans a singular question.
Telil manipulated the controls on his platform and brought it down to the bottommost level of the chamber to stand eye to eye with Henry.
Nice touch.
Ambassador Archer, on behalf of the Ruska race and the Kismar Federation, one asked, "No, I plead, with you and with humanity. Help us."
A general cry of support went up through the chambers. Telil let it play out for a moment before he continued.
"We will pay humanity any reasonable sum for their aid. We will pay top dollar for your specialists and better than market rates for the compounds that must be synthesized in high gravity. We will issue." Dead silence descended over the chamber as Henry raised his hand. He said something to Telil, who reached down and touched some controls. Henry's voice rang out across the silenced chamber.
Humanity and humanity's ambassador requests invocation of Rule 1312, Special Article 5, governing this type of special session. To save all of you the trouble of looking it up, a majority vote of the Council will override the Prime Minister's controls and allow me to float my platform up to address this august body.
Enible heard the slap of dozens of buttons so fast they almost seemed to come in unison. Henry only needed half of the Council. He got almost 2/3. They are more desperate than we thought. Or at least, more desperate than I thought. Kilintar growled audibly and made as if to shout, but he looked at Jalat and she subtly gestured him to be still. Enible felt a chill on his skin when he looked at Jalat. Her eyes had a faint red tinge to them, but she stood rock still. He checked to make sure the recorders on the session were working. More evidence that the blood rage is an outright fabrication. As if we need it. Henry's platform moved away from the wall and floated up to hover next to Telil. Both of their platforms rose to the height of the Prime Minister's platform, as had been customary before Kilintar convinced everyone to keep their platforms attached to the wall. Enible and the other ambassadors sat down as Kilintar. "Wait, no. That isn't hissing, it is the Zoltan equivalent of a giggle. What is he, oh no." Enible leaned forward in a panic to pound out a message to his brother, but he was too late. Henry's platform began to wobble, then slowly spin and float away from Telil's at a somewhat alarming speed. Henry wasted no time. He took one fast step to the edge of his platform, stepped upward onto its edge, and leapt. Enible almost felt like the air pressure in the chamber had dropped as every set of lungs suddenly drew in breath. That gap is almost 8 feet. Even a human can't. Then, Henry's midsection impacted with the side of Telil's platform. Enible could hear the air rush out of his friend's lungs and feared Henry would still fall the 100+ feet to the chamber floor. The human's hands, however, came down and caught the side wall of the platform, and he managed to lean forward and half scramble, half fall at Telil's feet. A collective sigh of relief swept through the chamber as Henry leapt to his feet, turned, gave Kilintar a jaunty wave, turned back to give a mocking salute and wink to Jalat, and then did a small bow towards the Council as a whole. A somewhat stunned smattering of applause flitted through the chamber. Kilintar roared loud enough to be heard, just barely, over the sound, and then the applause suddenly swelled to a wall of noise which drowned him out. Kilintar stood there and smoldered. Einbiel carefully looked over at Jalat, who looked accusingly at Kilintar. The man studiously did not meet her eye. 5 years ago, this would never have happened. Or, if it did, there would have been a riot in the town that would spill over and accidentally kill everyone currently in this room. But these Zoltans already tried that, and no, it won't work. Still, I wish Henry had just taken the high road and kept his platform docked. He sighed to himself. I guess it doesn't matter though, really. It is not like anything he could do would make those two have an even greater desire to kill him. Henry stood on Talil's platform and raised a hand for quiet. The applause respectfully tapered off, and Henry spoke.
The Confederated Worlds thank you, Ambassador Talil, for your stirring call to action. I am fully authorized to make several official statements at this time. The first and foremost is that humanity has heard your call for aid, and we will not sit idly by and let your worlds fall, nor have we ever intended to.
A general sigh of relief and light smattering of applause swept through the council chambers, but so did a bit of grumbling. You don't have them yet, brother. They can hear the things you haven't said with that statement, and are aware of just how much room you've left yourself, and now they wonder why you have waited. Henry continued.
Yes, my fellow sapiens, I said we never intended to let your worlds fall, and I meant it. To that end, we have been producing, at great speed and no small cost, the agent required to beat back this fungus. The reason we haven't released it to you before now is twofold. The first reason you are all familiar with. We issued a statement and an edict on what it would take before we would respond to this blight. That these Zoltans would be required to admit that they violated their own rules of war and pilfered, rather than plundered, the grain in question. We did not believe that even the Zoltans would be so arrogant and proud as to let entire worlds fall to this blight, rather than admit what we all know.
Henry shot a derisive look up at Gillette, who stood there looking down her snout at him.
In this we were wrong. It seems the pride of the Altan voting class knows no bounds. This is, in part, our own failing. We have the history of this league open to us, and have seen the atrocities visited on so many races by the Zoltans, and it was unwise of us to believe that they would be swayed by something like the lives of their allies, or the fate of their allies' worlds. We truly regret this miscalculation, and wish to assure all of the races of this council.
Henry paused and pointedly looked up at Gillette, as if to deliver his words directly to her.
It will never happen again. We will never again underestimate the depravity of the Zoltans, nor the willingness of the Zoltan voting class to sacrifice life in the pyre of their pride.
A dark chuckle filtered through the council chambers. Some of the Altan's closest allies tried to make noises of protest, but dirty looks from the other ambassadors stilled them. Gillette sneered at Henry and sat, then began filing her nails. That is not a gesture of nonchalance, Henry, like it is among you humans. That is a direct threat. She is going to try to have you killed, probably today, and damn the consequences. And Nibble wanted to send Henry a private message, but couldn't. He'd have to send the message to Talil's platform, and it wouldn't do for the cat to read it. He settled for calling forth one of his own guards, and giving him quiet instructions about what he was to do the moment the doors to their platform opened. Henry let everyone consider his bold accusation for a moment, and then continued.
To that end, the Confederated Worlds are taking the following steps. First, to the half-dozen worlds that are teetering on the edge of a biological collapse because of this fungus, we dispatched ships 2 days ago. These ships, with their cargo and their experts, are being provided as humanitarian aid to the worlds in question. Those ships are loaded with enough of the fungicide to treat the infected worlds, and have the experts required to make sure that the blight is properly cured. The Confederated Worlds will be paying for these efforts in full. This includes the costs of the ships, the experts, the fungicide, and the follow-up visits that will be required to make sure the blight stays eradicated. Second, we are releasing the entire secret to creating the fungicide needed to treat the blight. Your various nations will find, I am afraid, that this will do you little good, however. The process is long, involved, and requires culturing genetically engineered bacteria on an industrial scale in a gravity environment, at least as strong as my homeworlds. It also, of course, takes time. Therefore, third, we pledge to sell the compound to each of your worlds at cost.
Henry reached out to hit a button on his console, but stopped and stared in confusion for a moment. He then chuckled, shook his head, and continued.
Well, I had intended to send all of you a copy of the data needed to produce the compound, as well as a copy of the costs breakdown, but...
Henry looked over the edge of Talil's platform.
I am afraid my link to the necessary data is a little out of reach at the moment.
Another chuckle floated through the chamber at Henry's broad smile.
Not to worry. I will see to it that the information is sent to all of you post-haste. The data package will also have a list of production facilities where you can send your ships to pick up the compound. I am afraid that we will not be providing the shipping, at least not at our cost. However, for those of you who wish to expedite the delivery of the material you need, we will be providing contact information for a number of our shipping companies that have ships in the vicinity of those facilities. Those shipping companies have been given a special emergency powers rate schedule, so you need not worry about them trying to price gouge you. The rates they will be using are fixed at the average per light year rate as of this morning, but absent the normal taxes paid by shippers flying a Confederated World's flag, so you will find them to be a trifle less than that standard rate.
Henry flashed another of those smiles, and got a lot of smiles in return. The Confederated Worlds had notoriously low taxes for flying their flag, to the point that some foreign shippers had moved to flying a Confederated Worlds flag.
So my fellows, yes, humanity is here, and we pledge to help. You have our proposal and our pledge. Ambassador Talil, I thank you for the hospitality of your microphone. Ambassadors of the Council, I thank you for your indulgence and yield the floor to my esteemed colleague, Talil of the Kismar Nation.
A polite smattering of applause floated through the air, and Henry held up a hand as if to acknowledge it. Enable had to work to keep his features neutral as Henry very, very carefully did not look his way. But he knew his brother's body language and could see the impatience. You just scored a lot of points, brother. I don't want to do this. Golnar shifted behind him, a calculated motion to make him notice that she was being very studious about not kicking him in the ass where other people could see. I'm sorry, Henry. Even though this is your idea, I'm sorry. Enable stood boldly and stabbed at his display to request the floor. Talil feigned surprise and spoke, his voice ringing through the chamber.
The Kismar Federation recognizes a request to speak from the Fathrin Empire. Ambassador Enable Vecnar, I yield the floor to you.
Talil looked at him expectantly, somehow making it clear that he expected Enable to undock his own platform and float down to join him as Henry had done. When he didn't, Talil feigned annoyance. A little lashing of the tail, a quiver of the whiskers, a partial close of his eyes. Universal enough signs, and most ambassadors did a poor enough job of reading other species that they wouldn't realize it was an act.